38,000 years, the exalted monarch, queen and potentate, Lilibet, has reigned over mankind. Seemingly immortal, she commands her devoted subjects from her golden hover throne, leading the forces of the Imperium into countless battles, and expanding the dominion of humanity's brutal empire to the furthest reaches of space. A powerful psyker who has ruled with an iron fist since the dawn of humanity's information age, she is known and ubiquitously feared by every enemy of the Imperium of Man.
Hi everyone, Guy from Midwinter Minis here for a very fun, timely video. Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that Queen Elizabeth II is currently celebrating her Platinum Jubilee, her 70th year as monarch, and while I try to steer clear of any political stuff on the channel, I thought it would be quite a fun opportunity to do something commemorative, cool, and fun that you'll hopefully enjoy whether you're a monarchist or a Republican or just don't really care at all. I've teamed up with the ever-awesome Steve of Little Plastic People, you know, the one who's designed and printed his own amazing custom knight army, to create a wargaming miniature of the Queen for use in Warhammer 40,000. I mean, that's one quirky British thing colliding with another quirky British thing, right? That's the perfect match. Now, right off the bat, I want to let you know that this model is a gift from us to you, a free, pre-supported 3D printable model, and that you can use and abuse it as you see fit. I've also come up with some pretty fun rules for use in 40k, which I'll show you after I've built and painted the model. Now, I'm not a 3D printing expert by any means, I don't even have a 3D printer anymore, but Steve very kindly did the hard work for me, so this is how the model should print out. The main throne and the Queen herself are all one piece. Each side comes as a separate section, one has a minigun and the other has an energy weapon. There are also loads of anti-grav struts which connect to the sides. The supports are nice and thin with tiny contact points, and Steve said that they should just break away by peeling with your fingers, but I wimped out and I used snips. But yeah, they come away super easily. The tiny imperfections on the surface left behind by the supports are all on the downward facing surfaces, so you won't really see them on the finished model at all. Still though, I gently filed them away with a nail file. The throne has these tiny little supports between these sections, so don't forget to trim them away too. Okay, let's get sticking. These little shield generators attach to the little circular recesses on the sides of the model. I tried to glue them on so that the recesses lined up horizontally and vertically. Apply glue to the side of the throne, and then stick the model sides on. When you've glued the second side on, place it quickly on a flat surface and let it find a level so it'll be lovely and flat. There are a few different shapes of the anti-grav struts, and they go in particular places. You can see where they go in the renders if you follow the download link, but just a quick rundown, these flat sections with 4 struts go at an angle on each side. The little zigzag shaped struts attach right at the bottom in the middle of each side, with the downward sloping bits in the middle. The small bits with 2 prongs attach at the back of each side. The outward curving 3 strut sections go at the front, outer edge. They only click in place in one orientation, so dry fit them first to make sure you've got them the right way round. Just a quick tip, the slightly longer struts point forward on the front and point backwards at the back, and the shorter struts face down. And in exactly the same way, the curved 4 strut parts go on the front and back of each side. So after pretty simple assembly, this is what we've got. Lizzie on her finest gun-toting hover throne. Now, what would a hover throne be without a flying base? I rummaged around in my box of bases and found one that'll do the job. The centre of gravity on this model is around this point on the underside, so I scored a mark with my hobby knife and drilled out a hole to attach the flying base stand. To secure her in place for priming, I used blue tack to stick her struts down onto the lid of a little plastic tub, and yeah, that'll hold her for a while. And then I gave her a light dusting with grey plastic primer. Now you can obviously paint this model up however you want, but I'm going to be giving her a ludicrous golden throne. I mean, it would probably be treason not to, right? To start off, I'm going to use Citadel Rhinox hide, a nice chocolatey brown, to base coat the model. I'm in a bit of a rush to get this video out in a timely fashion, so I used my airbrush for this. You can use a brush if you want, whatever. Now, fun fact, when you want to base coat old Queenie from the underside, you can stick the butt end of a paintbrush into her exhaust pipe and suspend her like that. Very handy. Now, gold. I've got quite a few gold paints, but I've never really seen them next to each other to compare their unique characteristics. So let's change that. I grabbed all of my golds, and also raided Hattie's box of Citadel paints to see if she had any golds I could try. Holy sh... Yeah, anyway, lots of golds. Some technically bronzes, but all in all we've got 16 to try out. I sprayed some card with the same primer, masked off a 4x4 grid, painted on Rhinox hide, and then sponged on each gold paint in 2 coats. The second coat only in the center of each square, so that way I'll be able to get an idea of how transparent they are, and sponging rather than brushing to see what kind of texture they leave behind. I have to say I was pretty surprised by the results. Maybe I'll post a dedicated video about this sheet so you can see it in more detail, but every single paint had its own unique color, reflective quality, and texture left from sponging. The Queen's actual throne is a very warm rose gold, so I'll be avoiding the cooler and greener golds for now. Citadel's Balthazar gold is ludicrously opaque and very warm, so I'll use that one for the base coat and build up from it. Vallejo's model colour old gold is a really nice, very shiny medium gold with a warm hue to it, so that'll be perfect for the first layer. And for the highlights, the shiniest of the gold paints in my collection, Vallejo Game Air Polished Gold is going to add the final sparkle. While we're here though, check out how weirdly green the 80s Citadel Shining Gold was. Crazy. First up, Balthazar Gold in a very heavy dry brush all over the metal parts of the model. Next, to build up the shininess, I'll apply Old Gold with the heavy sponging technique all over the metal parts. Because this squishy sponge naturally can't get into the deeper recesses, they'll remain that dirty bronzy colour of the undercoat and base coat, but the flat sections will become a brighter gold with a bit more texture. I also dry brushed this gold, especially over the big edges, corners and prominent panels. To add some tonal variety while keeping things warm, I'll use Seraphim Sepia to add some shade to the recesses of the gold areas, and also near the bottom of any larger armour panels. After that's dried, here you can see we've got a nice battle tarnished colour going on, but let's give it a bit more polish with Polished Gold. I used a small flat brush to dry brush this all over the model, paying particular attention to the sharp bits along the edges of the throne, all the skull details, and the corners. I also buffed a bit onto some of the larger flat sections, like the exhaust vent and the side armour panels. Yeah, looking pretty nice. For the inset details on the throne spires, as well as the throne seat cushions, I'm going to base coat with Rhinox hide again, and then build up to Mephiston red by adding a little bit more each time to the mix, but only applying the red highlights to the outermost facing parts of the cushions. I added a teeny tiny bit of pale sand to the Mephiston red to lighten it up a bit, and used that new colour to add a very light inner edge highlight to the inset detailing, and little sketchy touches to the cushions to imitate fabric. Now, befitting her lineage, next up I'm going to use German Grey, which is a cool off-black, to base coat lots of stuff I don't want to be gold. First off, the anti-grav struts. There are quite a few of these, but they're not that tricky to paint. You can pretty easily get your brush into all the areas you need to without risking the gold. Just take your time. Or paint them before you stick them on, your choice. Also, I'm going to base coat both weapons with this, as well as the little screens and keyboards on the rear of the model and on the inside of the front edge. Also, all the Queen's gnarly life support cables are getting a German Grey base coat too. And while we're on base coats, I used pale sand thinned with water to base coat the Queen's face and hair, and then switched to the lovely Luthern blue to base coat her outfit. It was a toss-up between fuchsia and powder blue, but I reckon the blue will really pop on this otherwise very warm-toned model. I then used Coat d'Arms Lupin Grey to start cutting in some rough highlights on the blue outfit, and then once I could see that undercoat on the skin was dry, I base coated her face with the pale, deathly Flayed One's flesh. I mean, she's been alive for 38,000 years by this point, so what did you expect? For her famous grey Granny Do, I used Vallejo White Grey. I then used a gunmetal silver paint to base coat her bionic eye, the interface points on her chest, her little skull brooch, and her battle crown. To dry brush some quick highlights on the anti-grav struts, I used a cool paint called Mirage Blue by Greenstuff World. And then I dry brushed a gunmetal silver onto the 2 weapons on either side of the throne, and also very carefully on the life support cables. Now, I know I said I wanted a golden throne, but I think this is too gold. I'll pick out a couple of details like this trim section and the little skull designs, and a few details on the engine area in that gunmetal silver to break things up a bit. Now, I reckon it would be a pretty fun touch to have Lilibet's power and grav field being generated not by some fancy sci-fi magic, but by a massive electromagnet. So I base coated all of the coils on the back of the power generator with Castellax bronze. I used some black wash to dull down that shiny gunmetal I just painted on the trim, and added some to the weapons too. I then picked out a few areas on the trim and weapons to add a very light highlight using Vallejo's aluminium, a super bright metallic paint. I also painted the 4 little orbs on each of the shield generators too. I want to add a bit more texture on the seat cushions, so using just some thinned down pale sand, I added little dashes to hint at texture. This is really bright right now, but I'm going to be using a wash to both intensify the red soon, and hopefully it'll knock this back too. I then stippled on old gold onto some of the bigger armor panels just to really accentuate the shininess of the whole assembly, and also used a detail brush to fix some mistakes where I'd got other colours on the gold in the base coating stage. I then used a mix of brown and black wash together in equal parts and a detail brush to panel line all the sections of the armor, adding a bit of contrast and deepening the shadows. I also used this wash to darken down the anti-grav struts, just an all-over wash on the flat areas and then a quick wipe with the finger to get it off the raised areas. Easy. Getting near the end of the armoured section before we finish off old Lizzie, I actually dumped the polished gold in favour of Citadel's Liberator gold because of its superior opacity, and did quick, sketchy edge highlights on the most obvious corners and edges, and that should really brighten things up. I also sketched on some little scrapes and scratches, which I'll also add a bit of shade to in a second, but first, let's shade Lilibet's hair with this cool grey wash from Vallejo. Man, this works really well for grey hair. As I said, a red wash on the dark red details, especially the seat cushions to dull down those bright highlights. I used sepia shade, thinned with water about 50-50 to shade the Queen's actual skin, making sure not to let too much settle in the recesses, and then also used a bit of the shade to add a dash of darker tone to the top sides of all the little nicks and scratches I added in the armour. I went back to Flayed One Flesh to add some highlights to the brow, nose, cheekbones and chin. And then with some thinned white ink, I added a few tiny lines here and there to her hair. And also super carefully to her pearl necklace. For the screens and lens of the energy weapon, I'll be using this triad of dark green, vibrant green and yellow, base coating everything with the dark green, adding in the vibrant green towards the top, and finally finishing off with a tiny touch of yellow on the uppermost edges. Now let's make those copper coloured cables look their age with a dousing of dirty down verdigris. I warmed the bottle and the model with a hairdryer and then applied it to the coil sections. A few minutes later and it's already starting to look nice and corroded. Just a quick rub down with a moist cotton bud to push the verdigris effect off the gold elements, and we're done. As I said, obviously you can paint this Lilibet model up however you want, but here's mine. A queen fit for the Imperium of Man. If you want this model for your own army, or just to have fun painting, you can download it for free using the link in the video description, and probably pinned in the comments if I remember to do that. Now even if, like me, you don't have a 3D printer yet, download it anyway. You never know if you'll meet a pal who has one, or when you might end up getting one for yourself. Now before we take a look at the fun Warhammer 40k rules I cooked up for this crazy model, let me quickly thank the channel's latest supporters on Patreon. Stan Tayeb, Lord Lasades, Shady Katie, Mark Truran, Crossbones, Claire Reynolds, Vincent, Gavin Zallinger, Nima, Chad Irway, and Gage Maggio. Okay, here we go. Lilibet, Potentate of Holy Terra, a command unit costing 14 power or 280 points with the Imperium faction keyword and the character and fly keywords. She has a movement of 8, is hitting on 2s both in the shooting and fight phases, has a strength of 6 and a toughness of 7, a respectable 8 wounds, 6 attacks and a leadership value of 10. Her relic hover throne is well armoured and has a save of 2+. She's equipped with 3 weapons. The first, the subjugated cannon, has a 36-inch range and is assault 6. Even though it dishes out quite a lot of shots, it's not overly powerful at strength 4 with a -1 armor penetration. Now, the decapitation lance is a bit more fierce, projecting a neck-height heat beam at shorter ranges. It can fire up to 18 inches with the type assault D6, so potentially lots of heads rolling. Strength 6, minus 2 AP, and the blast ability will make this a tasty way to deal with massed infantry. In the fight phase, Lilibet can use her Grav Shock Field, which shares her strength, has no AP, but inflicts 2 damage. However, check out this ability. Instead of attacking with this weapon, Lilibet can force all enemy units engaged in combat with her to fall back their maximum movement, and the attack sequence ends. This is going to be a really fun mechanic, especially when paired with the counter-offensive stratagem, and will make Lilibet really hard to take down in close combat. Lilibet is also a powerful psyker, able to manifest 2 psychic powers per psychic phase and deny 2 enemy psychic powers. She knows Smite and can mix and match 3 other psychic powers from any Imperium-aligned codex. Very tasty. Now you can kind of see why she's 280 points. She also has a unique warlord trait, Terror of Terra. When an enemy unit is deployed from strategic reserve, roll a d6. On a 5+, that unit cannot be deployed that battle round. A very nasty, unique ability that will make your opponent reconsider their use of reserves, and those units might never see battle. She also has 4 unique abilities with pretty fun names. Send her victorious. If Lilibet is included in your force, she must be selected as the warlord. In addition, armies containing Lilibet receive 1 extra command point in the command phase. I mean, pretty straightforward. Next up, Happy and Glorious. All friendly core Imperium units receive +1 to their leadership and can reroll all failed morale and attrition tests. Basically, old Lilibet is an icon of the Imperium, and core units will have a big morale boost while she's on the battlefield. The third rule, long to reign over us. When Lilibet loses her last wound, roll a d6. On a 2+, that wound is not lost. A hyped up version of Commissar Yarek's special rule, basically Lilibet's only dying if you roll a 1 for that final wound. Nasty. And finally, God Save the Queen, giving Lilibet a 4+ invulnerable save. She might not be that effective in combat, but boy is she hard to kill. And that's it, I suppose. You can find the download link for the model, as well as the link to the datasheet in the video description. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon. It's my main source of income and honestly keeps this channel going. We've also got loads of fun t-shirts and music links in the video description too. Speaking of merch, I'll be sending out all of the remaining post-Vitruvian man prints this month. I'm doing it all manually and it's taking a bit longer than I thought, so apologies if you bought one and haven't had a dispatch confirmation yet. You'll definitely get it soon. And to help keep things under control, I've suspended sales of the prints on the website until the backlog is cleared. Huge thanks again to Steve for his inspired sculpting work and bringing my stupid grimdark Queen on a Golden Throne with Guns idea to life. And also to Simon from Simon Says Make Paint Play for painting up the awesome terrain I used in the background of the glamour shots. I mean, no guessing what he thinks of the Queen, huh? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.